The boardroom was ice cold, though it had nothing to do with the air conditioning. Nathan rose from his leather chair like he was delivering a quarterly report, not ending our 8-year marriage and professional partnership in front of strangers. His voice, once warm with ambition and shared dreams, came out flat and clinical. "Emily Chen, you're fired, effective immediately." I didn't move. My hand instinctively went to my stomach, 12 weeks along. "Nathan," I said, "I'm pregnant." He looked at me for a fraction of a second. A flicker of something passed through his eyes. Surprise? Guilt? Fear? I couldn't tell because it vanished just as quickly. Then came the laugh, cold and echoing against the glass walls. "Convenient timing," he smirked. "Security will escort you out." I tried to breathe, tried to anchor myself in the polished floor beneath my heels, in the sterile smell of that room, in anything but the humiliation flooding my veins. But all I could see was the smirk on Sienna Brooks's face, Nathan's assistant, the one who had slowly crept from the shadows of his calendar to the center of his life. She was standing next to him now, shoulder brushing shoulder, like she'd always belonged there. Sienna stepped forward like a cat approaching its kill. "If you'll all turn your attention to the screen," she said, "you'll see the recent performance metrics for the operations department." She clicked the remote. Charts lit up behind her. I frowned. "Those aren't the numbers I submitted." "These are the actual numbers," Sienna replied smoothly. "Not the ones you've been doctoring to hide your decline." I blinked. "That's absurd. I can show you the original reports." Nathan cut me off, sliding a folder across the table like he was offering a dessert menu. "We've already checked your laptop, found discrepancies that go back months. The evidence is compelling." I didn't touch the folder. I didn't need to. Whatever was in there had been planted. I looked across the table at Julian Grant, our largest investor, a man who had once toasted my algorithm as the future of logistics. He wouldn't meet my eyes. "The board has already voted," Nathan said, as though he were discussing office supplies. "Your performance has declined, and frankly, you've become dead weight." Dead weight. I could feel the words splintering inside me. I remembered staying up until 3 a.m., coding the prototype that had landed us our first major contract. I remembered running simulations from our garage apartment while Nathan worked a wine and dine strategy with investors. "Nathan," I said quietly but firmly, "we need to speak privately. There are things the board doesn't know." "There's nothing to discuss," he replied without hesitation. "Sienna's been doing your job for months. She'll be stepping into the role seamlessly." Sienna tried to hide her grin. She didn't try hard enough. "Nathan," I whispered again, not caring who was watching. "I'm carrying your child." His smile didn't falter. "And that's supposed to change what exactly?" He nodded toward Sienna. She leaned in, all gloss, and perfume and condescension. "Your access cards and laptop, please. Company policy." I removed my ID badge from around my neck with shaking fingers. I pulled the laptop from my bag. As I handed them over, Sienna leaned in so close I could smell her lipstick. She whispered, "He never loved you. You were just useful. Until you weren't." The boardroom doors opened. 2 security guards, Derek and Tony, entered. Men I'd worked alongside for years. Men who had signed a baby shower card for me just weeks ago. "Please escort Ms. Chen from the building," Nathan said, already turning away. Derek wouldn't look me in the eye. I walked. Slowly. Dignified. Like I hadn't just been gutted by the man I built a billion-dollar company with. Every step from that room to the elevator felt like a mile. As we reached the lobby, Tony finally muttered, We're really sorry, ma'am." "It's not your fault," I said, managing. A small smile. "Take care of yourselves." They stood awkwardly as I unlocked my car. I slid into the driver's seat and shut the door with a firm click. My hands were trembling, but I didn't cry. I reached for the phone I'd kept hidden, the one that wasn't on any company plan, the one only 5 people had the number to. I pulled up the contact marked contingency and pressed call. A woman's voice answered on the first ring. "Emily, has it happened?" I looked up at the Apex Innovations logo gleaming above the glass doors, the company I had dreamed up, designed, built from nothing. "It's time," I said. "Before we jump in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you." 3 hours later, I sat in my small apartment downtown, the one Nathan never cared to visit, assuming it was just a leftover real estate investment. He didn't know that this space had become my sanctuary, my lab, my fallback plan when I started sensing shifts in his tone and his loyalty. While the main house in Westlake Hills had turned into a place of hollow dinners and forced smiles, this apartment held shelves lined with handwritten code notebooks, drives with backup copies of everything I'd built, and a fireproof safe behind. The bookshelf that contained the one thing that mattered more than love: proof. The original algorithm, my algorithm, that formed the backbone of Apex Innovations scrolled across my laptop screen. 5 years ago, Nathan was charming investors over cocktails, while I sat in this very room mapping the system that would revolutionize supply chain forecasting. He told me I wasn't ready for the spotlight, that I got flustered in meetings, that it was better if he did the pitching. "We're a team, Emily," he used to say, his voice silky with reassurance. "You handle the tech, I'll handle the people." I believed him. That was my first mistake. A breaking news alert pinged on my screen. Apex had announced an emergency press conference for the following morning. They weren't wasting any time. I opened my safe and retrieved the folder labeled Origin Documentation. Inside were dated patent applications, legal correspondence, and a fully executed licensing agreement Nathan had signed himself, allowing Apex to use my technology under my maiden name, Emily Zhang. He never thought twice about it. He was too busy taking the credit, assuming I'd never separate from him, personally or professionally. My phone buzzed with a message, unknown number, but I didn't need a name to recognize the venom. "Nathan wants the house too. We expect you. Out by Friday." It had to be Sienna. The lack of punctuation was her signature. I didn't respond. Instead, I dialed the one person on the board who might still care more about data than theater. Julian Grant. He answered after 3 rings. "Emily," he said cautiously. "We need to meet," I told him flatly. "Not about my termination, about something much bigger, something that puts your $100 million investment at serious risk." There was silence on the line, and then, "Continental Club, private dining room, 1 hour." When I arrived, Julian was already seated, a glass of untouched scotch in front of him. His face was tired, calculating. The kind of man who'd been rich long enough to know better than to panic. "You're taking this well," I said, sliding into the seat across from him. "I had a feeling something was coming," he replied. "Nathan's energy's been off. For months. What am I about to see?" I laid the documents before him. The patent filings, the licensing agreement, the emails from our earliest days. Julian flipped through them in silence, his expression shifting almost imperceptibly from skepticism to concern. "This patent was filed before Apex existed," he murmured. "And under my maiden name," I confirmed. Nathan signed a licensing agreement without reading it. He thought it was just legal formality. I created the IP that powers every Apex product before the company had a name, a logo, or $1 of funding. "Why didn't you ever say anything?" he asked. "Why?" "Let him take the credit?" "Because I believed in our partnership," I said quietly. "I thought we were building something together." Julian nodded slowly. "Keep going." I slid the next set of documents across the table, Spreadsheets, comparison charts, red flags highlighted in glaring yellow. These are financial irregularities. I flagged months ago. They were ignored. When Sienna came in, the reporting channels shifted. Expenses disappeared. Revenue projections became suspiciously rosy. It wasn't until I started asking questions that I became inconvenient. Julian's face darkened. You're saying the company's performance is being fabricated? I'm saying Apex is in worse shape than anyone realizes, and Nathan is trying to sell it before the house of cards collapses. Probably to global tech. They've been circling for years. Can you prove that? Not yet. But if you give me until tomorrow, I'll give you more than proof. I'll give you leverage. Back at my apartment, I contacted Eliza Winters, my personal attorney and the sharpest woman I knew. We'd met in college, and while she had traded late nights coding for late nights in litigation, our mutual obsession with documentation never waned. Your case is solid, she said after reviewing the files I uploaded. The licensing agreement is bulletproof. The patent office confirmed your filings are active and original. I can have emergency injunctions ready by morning. Do it, I said. And Eliza, be ready. Tomorrow won't just be legal, it'll be public. That night, I barely slept, but not out of fear. There was a stillness inside me, a clarity that had been missing for too long. For months, I'd played small, tried to hold on to something that had already rotted. But now, I wasn't holding on anymore. I was letting go. And once I let go, all that remained was strategy. At 8:55 the next morning, I sat on my couch, hair tied back, laptop open, a mug of peppermint tea resting beside me. On screen, the Apex press conference was about to begin. The company's branding gleamed behind an empty podium. 2 steps later, Nathan walked out, flanked by Sienna in a navy sheath dress that mimicked my usual style. He smiled into the camera, confident, rehearsed. Thank you for joining us on short notice, he began. As Apex Innovations continues, to grow and evolve, we must occasionally make difficult decisions for the health of the organization. It is with regret that I announce the departure of our COO, Emily Chen. I took a slow sip of tea and typed a single word to Eliza. Now. Nathan continued, feigning sorrow, spinning lies about personal difficulties, about instability, about erratic behavior. His voice lowered, as if sharing a family secret. We did everything we could to support her, but ultimately, we had to do what's best for the company. And then came the buzz. Reporters' phones lit up. A woman in the front row raised her hand. Mr. Chen, we're receiving reports that federal injunctions have just been filed against Apex, blocking the use of your core software due to patent ownership claims by one Emily Zhang. Is this true? Nathan blinked. I'm not aware of any such filings, he said, his voice tight. That sounds like confusion. Another voice rang out. The filings include a licensing agreement signed by you, and documents showing she created the IP before Apex existed. Does Apex actually have the right to use its own technology? The press room exploded in chaos. Nathan stammered. Sienna leaned in, whispering urgently. Cameras zoomed, flashes fired. And there, on my screen, I watched the empire we built begin to tremble under the weight of truth. I sat back, fingers resting on the keyboard, heart steady. This wasn't over. Not by a long shot, but the first domino had fallen. By noon, Apex's stock had dropped nearly 18%. News of the injunction had rattled not just the press, but shareholders, analysts, and employees alike. The company's legal team scrambled to issue statements, each more vague and contradictory than the last. I watched it all from the lake house, my contingency location, a secluded property I'd quietly purchased years ago through a shell LLC. No one knew it existed except me, Eliza, and a few trusted contractors. It sat quiet and low along the shore of Lake Travis, surrounded by tall trees and silence. The perfect place to run a war room. That afternoon, Eliza called from the courthouse. Judge Hamilton had agreed to an emergency hearing the next morning. "He's seen enough," she said. "If Nathan thinks this will go away with PR spin and charisma, he's about to get a rude awakening." "Let him try," I replied, already, opening the next file on my laptop. It was time to make sure he had no exits left. My phone buzzed again, this time with a name I didn't expect. Sienna. I stared at the screen for a long moment, debating whether to answer. I expected threats, or more smirking cruelty. Instead, her voice was shaky. "I need to talk to you, not with Nathan, alone." I didn't respond immediately. "He's planning to sell the company," she said before I could hang up. "To Global Tech. He's fast-tracking it, trying to get the board to approve the deal before they can understand what's really happening. He says once the sale goes through, no one will matter. Not you, not me." "Why are you telling me this?" I asked, my voice like stone. "Because I was stupid," she said. "I thought I mattered to him. I thought if I took your place, I'd have what you had. But I don't. I never did. And now he's cutting me out too." She paused. "I recorded a conversation last night. Him talking about how none of this matters because he'll be rich enough to make it disappear. I'll send it to you." It arrived minutes later via secure drop, a clean audio file. Nathan's voice, crisp and confident. "By the time they figure out what's real, we'll be in the Bahamas. Let her throw lawsuits. I'll settle. Pay her off with nothing. She has no leverage if we sell first." He laughed. I didn't. Within the hour, I had the recording authenticated and forwarded it to Julian Grant. When he called, his tone was different, urgent. "I'm pushing the board to delay the vote, but you need to be in the room, Emily. They need to hear this from you." "I'll be there," I said. That evening, Eliza and I met at the courthouse to finalize everything. We walked into Judge Hamilton's chambers just as Nathan's legal team arrived, looking smug and underprepared. That smugness didn't last long. Judge Hamilton reviewed our evidence, the patent filings, the signed licensing agreements, the financial analysis from our forensic accountants. Nathan's team tried to argue that my employment contracts overrode the licensing terms, but Eliza had anticipated that. She flipped to the clause excluding pre-existing IP, clearly initialed by Nathan himself. The judge's face remained impassive, but his decision was swift and decisive. The injunction was not only upheld, it was expanded. Apex was barred from selling, licensing, or modifying any product using my technology. Furthermore, due to the scope of the allegations, he appointed a special master to oversee Apex's operations until the ownership dispute was resolved. It was a bombshell. Nathan's lawyers protested, demanded time, accused me of trying to tank the company out of spite. Judge Hamilton raised a single brow. If that were true, Ms. Chen wouldn't have structured her injunction to preserve licensing continuity. She wants to protect her rights, not destroy the company. By the time the hearing ended, word had already reached Apex's executive floor. I could see it in the eyes of the board members as I walked in the next morning. The usual tension? Yes. But this time it was mixed with something else. Fear. Nathan stood at the head of the table, flanked by Sienna. He stopped mid-sentence when I entered, his mouth opening slightly as if he couldn't believe I dared to show up. "Eliza copies," I said calmly, and my attorney handed out the court's ruling. "This meeting is over," Nathan barked. "She doesn't have standing. She's been terminated." "Not according to the law," Julian said, rising from his seat. "Not when the board's vote was based on fraudulent data and a fabricated performance review." The room fell silent. Nathan's face reddened. I turned toward the board. "I know you've heard a lot over the last 48 hours. I'm not here to make speeches. I'm here with proof. Apex's core technology was created before this company existed, under my name. That technology has been misrepresented and Exploited. You've been given numbers that don't align with reality. You've been asked to vote on a sale based on lies. Catherine Lynn, the chair of the audit committee, frowned. Are you saying Apex's financials have been manipulated? I'm saying Nathan instructed Sienna to falsify internal reports to make the company appear more valuable than it is, and I have the files to prove it. Nathan slammed a hand on the table. That's a lie. She's doing this to ruin me. Didn't flinch. You ruined yourself. And then, as if summoned by fate, the boardroom doors opened. 3 federal agents entered, calm and deliberate. Special Agent Keller, FBI, the woman in front announced, flashing her badge. We have a warrant to seize documents and electronic devices pertaining to securities fraud at Apex Innovations. The room exploded. Nathan moved toward a laptop fast, too fast. One of the agents shouted for him to stop, but he kept going. I stepped forward, instinct overriding fear. Nathan, don't be... He turned, wildly, and in a split second, the laptop in his hand swung through the air and struck me square in the abdomen. The pain was immediate and breathtaking. I gasped and doubled over, one hand clutching my stomach as the world blurred around me. For a moment, everything else faded. The agents, the shouting, the stunned faces of board members, and all I could hear was my own pulse, wild and terrified. Nathan was tackled to the ground and handcuffed, screaming that I was faking it, that I was insane, that I was trying to destroy him, but no one was listening anymore. I was helped into a chair. My vision swam, my hands trembling as I reached down to feel for movement. A nurse had been called. An ambulance was on the way. Someone pressed a water bottle into my hand. Sienna stood in the corner, shaking. Not smug now, not victorious, just small. Nathan kept shouting as he was dragged out, spitting words that sounded more like a tantrum than a defense. She's nothing without me, he screamed. I looked up, my voice hoarse but steady. Everything you built, Nathan, was mine. And now, the world finally knew it. The ambulance ride was quiet, save for the beeping of monitors and the rustle of the paramedic's gloves as he checked my vitals. I stared at the ceiling of the vehicle, blinking back the sting in my eyes, not from tears, but from the surge of adrenaline that hadn't yet let go. The pain had subsided into a dull ache, and the baby's heartbeat remained strong, steady. I hadn't lost her. That was all that mattered now. At the hospital, I was taken through a side entrance and registered under a pseudonym. Eliza had already called ahead. Within minutes, I was hooked to monitors, an IV in my arm, and the sound of my daughter's heartbeat pulsing through the room like a steady drum. The doctor said the impact had caused uterine irritability, but no internal bleeding. As long as I stayed hydrated and kept my stress down, she'd be fine. The irony of that last instruction almost made me laugh. I stayed overnight, not because I had to, but because, for the first time in days, I felt safe. No press, no board meetings, no betrayals in heels and tailored suits. Just soft lighting, the rhythm of the monitor, and my daughter kicking gently every so often as if to remind me she was with me in this. The next morning, I was released with strict instructions and a medical bracelet I didn't remove. I wanted people to see it, to remember what Nathan had done in that boardroom when he lost control of the narrative. Back at the lake house, things moved quickly. The evidence seized by the FBI from Apex's servers confirmed everything: financial fraud, investor deception, attempts to delete company records. Sienna, in a final act of self-preservation, handed over a full folder of emails and directives from Nathan, detailing falsified performance reports and instructions to manipulate investor data. The board convened, an emergency vote within 48 hours. Julian chaired the session. I wasn't in the room this time, per the court-appointed special master's guidelines, but I didn't need to be. The numbers, the proof, the witnesses, all of it spoke louder than any speech I could give. Nathan, was permanently removed from all leadership and ownership positions at Apex. His shares were frozen, his access revoked. Formal charges were filed within days, and bail was denied. The footage of him striking a pregnant woman with a laptop, played on every major news network, made sure of that. Sienna received limited immunity in exchange for her full cooperation. She was banned from holding any C-suite position for the next decade, and fined heavily, but she avoided jail. When I passed her in the courthouse lobby weeks later, she looked smaller somehow, less polished. She didn't say a word. And I didn't offer one either. Some silences don't need filling. Apex Innovations underwent a massive restructuring. With the court ruling affirming my sole ownership of the foundational technology, the company rebranded under a new name, Zhang Technologies. My maiden name. My name. I returned not as COO, but as Chief Innovation Officer. I didn't want to oversee spreadsheets or hiring pipelines. I wanted to do what I had always done. Build. Julian stayed on as chairman. Catherine took over compliance. The board was refreshed with faces who valued integrity over charm. And the new CEO, Janice Maury, a woman with 2 decades in ethical enterprise scaling, understood exactly where the line was and never crossed it. I implemented a set of policies that had once seemed impossible in Nathan's world. Full parental leave for all employees, on-site childcare, transparency reports every quarter, equity distribution for key developers. People didn't just return to work, they came alive in it. 3 months later, I stood in the nursery of my new home, a warm, sunlit house near downtown Austin, not far from the office. My daughter's room smelled like cedar and soft cotton. Her crib was painted a soft green, and her name, Maya, was stenciled on the wall in simple white script. Maya Chen, not Walker. Never again. She was born on a quiet Tuesday morning, just as the company's quarterly earnings report hit the wire. We had exceeded every projection. The news called it a miracle. I called it justice. The day after Maya's birth, I received a message from Eliza. Nathan's lawyers had submitted a settlement proposal. He would relinquish all remaining claims in exchange for partial immunity in the civil cases and a non-disclosure agreement. I declined. He would face every count, every consequence. This wasn't revenge. It was clarity, accountability. And I wasn't going to let him slink back into the shadows of corporate memory while I carried the weight of his destruction. Maya deserved more than that. So did I. Weeks passed. Headlines faded. What remained was the steady, honest rebuilding of something real. A company born from code and conviction, now led with transparency and truth. Every decision I made with Maya in mind. One day, she would grow up and ask about her father. I didn't know exactly what I'd say, but I knew this. I would tell her that power is not in the noise people make when they're on top, but in the silence you keep while you rise. That sometimes, the strongest thing you can do is walk away, and then build something no one can take from you. And I would tell her that she saved me just by existing. Because in the moment I lost everything, I remembered what mattered most. Not a company, not a man, not even my name. But the future I could still shape. With my hands, with my voice, and with the quiet, unstoppable love of a mother who refused to disappear. And that, I would make sure, would never be forgotten.